Time for thinking real estate. It's a lifestyle show.
That's for sure. A good lifestyle.
Yes. A Jackson lifestyle show.
There you go.
Laura Dwyer Schlechte.
We have Bill back.
Bill's back.
Bill's back.
Hi, Bill.
Hi.
So,
Laura, do you
Yeah, okay.
yes,
have a neighborhood meeting coming up
I
at all?
do. I do.
It seems like you're due for one.
Yeah, I am.
Oh.
In fact, tonight
Oh, wow.
I've got one.
Okay.
6:30 to 8 at the Ganson Street Baptist Church, which is, I think the address is 637 West Ganson. It's just
Near
east.
West, yeah.
Yeah, just east of West Avenue. On the south side of the road. 6:30 to 8. I said it once, I'll say it again.
What's on the agenda?
Yeah, any particular topics?
Yes. I have the state of Michigan coming down doing they're going to present the facts on proposal 1. And then we're going to talk about water, sewer, and road infrastructure. And
Do you have a special guest for that?
I have John Dowling. Yeah, he's going to talk about the condition, not that we don't know what the condition of the roads are, but
So who is John Dowling?
he's our city engineer. And our infrastructure, our water and sewer, it's very interesting. I find it
Guru.
interesting.
Yeah. Infrastructure guru.
Yeah, he knows it. And when I talk about somebody who knows the history of this community, there's a guy right there that when he retires, we will lose a lot of history. Hopefully he writes it down, shares it, gives it to whoever's going to
Is
take
he from
his place.
Jackson?
Good question. No, I think he went to high school here.
Did he?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had that conversation.
We
he and
have?
I. No, John and I.
Oh, okay.
Pretty sure his wife did too. I could be wrong.
Okay.
So that's tonight, and people come, and if you have questions, bring them. I'll do my best to
What time?
answer.
What time again?
6:30 to 8, the
6:30.
Ganson Street Baptist Church.
Okay.
637 West
Plenty of free
Ganson.
parking there,
Yep, park in the back.
right off Jansen Street.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Go
And
figure.
then, go figure. Then the other thing we have that launched yesterday, the website.
Technically it launched today.
Oh, technically it launched today, but I used it and test drove it yesterday.
You and Ted Cruz launched today?
Mhm.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah. Is the lighter, quicker, cheaper placemaking. There is a website called activatejackson.com, and you can go on there and give us some ideas. There's Jackie and John Larson, I believe, did a great job of creating a website so that you can put your ideas for placemaking on there. And then if you don't want to do it on the website, you can come to our event on Thursday evening, March 26th, this Thursday, 5:30 to 7:30, at the Grand River Brew Pub, or Marketplace, whichever one you want to call it.
Okay.
And it's open house style, and share your ideas on some placemaking. And if you don't know what placemaking is, the website will tell you, and we'll tell you the night of.
Can you tell me right now what placemaking is?
Yeah, you make placements. It's sort of like a combination of origami and knitting. You make placemats, I think is what it is.
I
Yeah,
think
whatever.
you're being facetious.
Maybe,
It is
you think?
getting the community. It's getting the community to create their vision of what they want their public spaces to look. How they're going to activate their public spaces. Whether it's by an activity, could be something as simple as putting a bench in a strategic location where one is needed because people want to sit at that specific location.
Or like a putting green
Or
downtown.
putting
Sure,
green
that'd be
downtown,
perfect.
which is what I submitted online. Little 3-hole putt-putt right there by First Merits Bank. Perfect.
I was thinking
for
of
us.
batting cage. Batting cage.
You never
The
know.
pitching
You
machine,
never
that'd
know.
be great, wouldn't it?
Could be a
What about
little
a little
out.
touch football
There you go.
on
And this
Jackson
is-
Street.
There you go. Perfect.
This is lighter, quicker, cheaper, so this is kind of developing prototypes and inexpensively, see if they'll work, see if people are drawn to them, activate the space, people are interested in it. And if they are, then wherever it is, whether it's public, private, or nonprofit, can know that they can spend their money wisely on something more solid
Are
and
a lot of
permanent.
communities doing this?
I assume so, but we're just ahead of the curve.
Okay.
I like to be ahead of the curve.
Well, in this particular one, we're only one of 4.
Lighter.
We're only one of 4 on this particular one, and we're the first one to jump out of the gate and get it going.
So
One
this
of 4
meeting
what?
again is,
Communities.
In Michigan,
Communities.
you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. Probably nationally too. We got picked because the guy that's spearheading it knows that I'm aggressive and will push it forward, so.
so the
That's a good
placemaking
thing.
meeting again.
Thursday, Grand River Marketplace or Brew Pub, whatever you know it as, at 5:30 to 7:30. We're gonna have pizza there and open house style. Come on in, share your ideas, buy a beer if you choose, buy a soda, and let's get Jackson active.
Get placemaking. Okay.
Placemaking, or go to activatejackson.com. We have a Facebook page too, right? Same name, activatejackson.com.
2 meetings coming up
Yeah, tonight
and Thursday.
and Thursday.
Okay.
All right. Now, let's talk real estate.
Before you do that, I want to give a shout out to Jackson Public Schools, Jackson High, because
Oh.
you and I went to, as the guest of Ted and Linda Ray at Craft Agency, at their table at the Ambassador Dinner, where we saw last year's honoree, Greg O'Connor, this year's honoree emeritus. But it was a spectacular thing, and kudos to John Waldron, who's the chairperson of it this year. Did a great job. The principal, Barb
Beard.
Pauley.
Barb Beard, Pauley.
Okay, and everybody that worked on it. It really is a fabulous event. They do a great job on it. It really is quite nice. So
A
I wanted
lot
to give a
of
shout out. A lot
valid
of great kids
Victorians.
too. Yeah, the kids were unbelievable. These bright kids.
There's
So that
one
was
kid
really
that
good.
got, what'd you say, $60,000 to $80,000?
Yeah,
Yeah.
one young man got a scholarship. He's choosing between 60 and 80,000. This is the art student Zach. Somebody, I can't remember his last
I
name.
don't
But
know.
all these kids.
I
are
might go
really
back
brilliant.
to school.
Yeah, just to get that scholarship. What is that? 3 years salary for you at the
my
radio
God.
station?
At least.
I mean, he must be brilliant. I
All-
haven't seen
all
his
those
work,
kids
but,
are.
Well, they were all 4-pointers.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
that's
Right.
amazing.
Right.
We had 2 friends
You know, I
with their
figure
kids
that
in
I
there.
figure the Waldron son must have gotten his brains from his mom because I'm not sure about John.
Well, his he
Just,
was.
John, just kidding.
Well, they do say when children inherit their mother's brains and their father's common sense.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
But you know, Waldron's son was up there. Sangeeta
Sangeeta's,
Sinha's
yeah.
daughter, and the Simonetti's daughter was up there.
Simonetti.
And who else did we know?
Uh,
Probably some other people we knew, but there was some.
yeah, some very, very
Many.
bright kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
15, wasn't it?
Something
Something
like
like
that.
that.
Yeah. But they do a really. Well, we've been going every year. Usually as the guest of Ted and Linda Ray, and it's really been a nice event. Anyway. All right. So what do you want to talk about today?
Well, you know, there was a thing
Since
that
there's
came
no time
across.
left now, we just spent the entire time talking about your meetings.
There was something that crossed my desk about environmental baseline. If a commercial property fails to do baseline environmental, I'll say it correctly. What
That's
are the
not exactly correct.
Oh, well, I'm
Keep
sure
going.
you'll correct
I
me.
will, yeah. Go for it.
What are the consequences to the now new property owner once they close?
Well, first of all, the term baseline doesn't apply. Baseline environmental assessment, BEA, is unnecessary unless the property is contaminated. So you're mixing your terms.
Well, this
here.
is why I have you on the show, though, is because I'm not an attorney, nor do I pretend to be one.
Oh, seriously?
So,
Seriously? You don't pretend to be an attorney? Yeah, okay. All right.
So the property has to be contaminated?
Yeah, in order to have a BEA.
but how do you know if it's contaminated? If you
Again,
don't do a BEA?
No.
No.
You don't do a BEA. What you do is what's called an environmental assessment.
Okay.
You do a phase 1 environmental assessment. Now first, let's back up a little bit. The federal law changed in 1986. The state law changed in 1995, I believe it was. 95 when we started the BEA. But in 1986, with the amendments to what's known as the Superfund Act, the federal government adopted a policy of what's called strict liability. If you buy property other than residential property, and you fail to exercise due diligence in investigating its environmental condition, and it later turns out that the property you purchased is contaminated, you are liable for the cost of the cleanup of that property, even though you didn't cause the contamination. In other words, you buy a former gas station. You didn't even know it was a gas station 40 years ago, in the 1940s and 50s. How many of those gas stations do you think had tanks that leaked in those days? Give me a percentage.
100%.
Most of them.
Probably 100%, because they had single-walled metal tanks that rusted, the pipes, they rusted, they leaked, then they contaminated the environment. But they may have been abandoned as a gas station back in the 1960s. You now buy in the 1990s, the 2000s, whenever it is, you buy it now. The law absolutely requires that in order to protect yourself from future liability, that you first conduct a phase 1 environmental assessment. What happens is that they don't do any testing on site for that, but they check the records, the history, they do a site inspection, but they don't do any testing. If they find what's known as a REC, a recognized environmental concern, an REC, a REC, that, depending upon whether it's a REC of significance or if it's one not of significance, if it is, then the environmental consultant that you've hired will do a phase 2 environmental assessment to determine whether or not there is contamination on the property. And if it's a gas station, former gas station, for example, they're not going to test for toluene and things that relate to, like if it was a former industrial site where they were using industrial type chemicals, they'll test for BTEX, the elements of fuel, of gasoline. And so what will happen is, let's suppose that they find that the property is contaminated, and it's contaminated at levels which exceed the residential standards. That means the property is now a, quote, facility. And the term facility in environmental law has a special meaning. It means it is a property that is contaminated. Michigan is the only state that has adopted, and it has been accepted by the federal government, where if you want to buy a contaminated property, you submit what's called a BEA, or you do what's called a BEA, to create a plan, which is called a due care plan, to allow the contamination to remain in place, but to protect the public from ever coming in contact with it, and to prevent its spread or migration to adjacent properties. In other words, before we adopted the BEA in Michigan in 1995, if you found the property was contaminated, you walked from it, or you required the seller to clean it up, but most sellers wouldn't do that because the cost was so expensive. So the BEA is a method by which, in the state of Michigan, if you determine or find that the property is contaminated, you may still be able to purchase it, but you will have to do a BEA. And you have to do the BEA within 45 days of the earlier of taking possession or acquiring title. And if you fail to meet that 45-day deadline, you're toast. And it turns out the property is contaminated. You are now liable for the cost of cleanup. And that cost of cleanup can, in many circumstances, be horrendous. So
what happens if I buy one and I don't do that, and it is contaminated?
You might think about one-way ticket to Guatemala, Costa Rica, Brazil, someplace that is outside the extradition provisions of the United States.
But
I'm just saying that facetious. Really, you have
well,
yourself
okay.
a
So
serious
if I
problem.
close on one and I find out within a short period of time, I do have a remedy.
You gotta do the BEA within 45 days following the earlier of taking title or possession. And if you do this, if you take title, you take possession, and all of a sudden you get religion and you say, "Gee, I should have done my due diligence," you're not going to get it's highly unlikely you're going to be able to get everything done in the 45 days. You can try. And BEAs are no longer approved by the DEQ. You do the BEA, you do a due care plan, you can submit it to the DEQ for approval. You might be able to get it taken care of within the 45 days.
And I don't find out, now what kind of liability as a realtor do I have for not advising my client to?
Most realtors have no liability for that, even as a buyer's agent, and the reason is, the reasons are twofold. One, the buyer's agency agreement that you have and virtually every competent realtor has contains a provision that says, we're not lawyers, we're not engineers, we're not architects, we are not environmental consultants. We recommend that you have inspections or investigations done by all of these individuals and that you retain an attorney. We don't have that expertise, and that disclaimer gets the realtor off the hook. The second thing is, since all of these rules I'm talking about apply to non-residential properties, the law treats a non-residential purchaser, a commercial purchaser, as having a greater degree of sophistication than a residential purchaser, and they should have known better.
And what about if I'm the seller and I didn't disclose and I have a well on cleaning? It's called a well, isn't it? That
You're
cleans.
talking about monitoring well?
Right.
No, but take the easy example. Let's suppose that you know it's a former gas station. You either know or suspect that, you don't even have to have that.
No, let's say I'm a seller and I have a monitoring well on my property, but I don't disclose it and I sell it.
Well, the monitoring well doesn't mean the property's contaminated. The monitoring well may have been put there to find out whether there's contamination. So the law, there's a specific statute that says that a seller or lessor of property who knows or suspects that the property is contaminated has an absolute statutory duty to disclose that to a prospective purchaser.
So if I'm the seller and I don't do that, I'm got a liability on my shoulders.
You have a potential liability. Again, you go back, there's an issue of reliance. In other words, if you are a non-residential purchaser of property, you have to do your due diligence. And if you fail to do it, falling back on the failure of a seller to tell you that the property is contaminated is a poor choice. You really want to exercise due diligence, and you hire a qualified environmental consulting firm. Phase one environmental assessment on most properties that we deal with, unless it's a large industrial site where we're doing a phase two. The phase one is going to cost $1,500 to $1,700. If you have an environmental consulting firm quoting you more than that, call me, because I know a few of the really good firms that will do it for less. And then doing a phase two, there's no way to predict what the cost of a phase two will be. It depends upon what the environmental consultant finds in the phase one, how large the site is, what the type of chemicals were that were being used. There are a whole host of factors there. How far below the surface the groundwater table is, a number of things. So,
Okay.
I mean, this subject I talk about to realtors and to lawyers and bankers quite frequently.
And now you've talked about it on your radio
Well,
show.
and we're just scratching the surface. We really ought to talk about this a little bit more, and we ought to talk about it in the context of residential purchasers too, because you still have underground fuel oil tanks, you have being adjacent to former gas stations. I just picked up a case in northern Michigan representing a municipality. It's been sued by a downstream owner as a result of an alleged failure in a sewage treatment facility. I mean, a whole host of things that affect residents.
You can still sell the property, right?
You can still sell it, you make full disclosure, and then the
You say there used to
purchasers.
be a gas station there and it's all yours. Go for it.
Yeah, and the
Have fun.
purchaser.
See you later.
Have at
Well,
it.
but the purchaser would be absolutely nuts not to put a condition in the purchase agreement that says, my purchase is subject to environmental investigation, which determines that the property is not contaminated. And here's the way it usually works out.
Well,
I
he could
gotta
buy-
interrupt you because the show is ending.
He could still buy it,
Can
even
still-
if it's contaminated.
Yeah, you can still buy it,
Hey,
sure.
I love contaminated property.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm thinking about mutation of my children later on, right?
Well-
So I might as well buy it.
you could buy it and just let it sit there, right?
Yeah.
As it is doing.
Yeah, but then if something happens, let's suppose that it's contaminated, the contamination migrates to a downstream owner, the groundwater, the
Yeah.
adjacent owner now sues you because you own the contaminated property, you have not taken measures to prevent the migration, or you've done something to exacerbate the contamination. Guess what? You now have a
What
huge
happens if the
liability on your shoulders.
contamination was as a result of the neighboring property and it contaminated your property and then it went through your property?
You have, in most circumstances, you have a right against the property where the contamination originated. That's another reason why that owner should have done a phase one environment, or done an environmental investigation.
Okay, we have to
Liability.
stop.
Yeah.
I know it's tough. Okay.
You asked the question,
Well,
don't give me
but I
that,
didn't,
okay?
I thought we could.
What, you wanted me to just?
Stop. Okay, I have a new listing at 720 Griswold, 84.9. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, just a cute house of over 1,400 square feet. 3310 West Morale has been reduced to 139.9. 1.5 baths, original owner, they built it, nice ranch, full basement, over 1,400 square feet, sits on almost 4.5 acres. Virginia Court, which is a really cute dollhouse with lake access to Clark Lake, 139.9, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Lori Drive, Western School District, 124.9, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, almost 1,300 square feet. 4647 Westbrook condominium, 46,000, 2 bedroom, 1.5 bath. And then I have to admit that when we were doing the monthly payments last week, they were wrong. My calculator on
Yeah,
my phone is
I
not
know.
working right.
I
I've got to
tried.
get a new one.
I tried to bail you out on that.
I know, and you did, and probably people would have forgotten by now, but I just wanted to fess up
Probably
that it
wasn't
was
good to bring that back up.
totally wrong. So ignore last week's
Call.
show. 780-3800.